Some Sundays are so gentle, so full of light, you mistake them for blessings. The sun rises slowly. The ocean glitters. Somewhere a church bell calls people toward prayer, toward love, toward futures they think are waiting patiently for them. If I had known what that morning was hiding, I would have held him longer. My name is Emily Parker, and this is the story of the man who promised he would come back, and the ring he carried in his pocket when the sky fell. Daniel Harper never learned how to lie to me. Not with words. Not with silence. Not even with a smile. So the moment he walked out of his house that morning, trying very hard to look normal, I knew something was living inside him, something nervous and shining. I beeped the horn twice. He almost jumped out of his skin. I laughed. "There he is," I said when he opened the door. "My serious sailor." "I'm not serious," he answered too quickly. But he was. He kept touching his coat pocket like he was making sure something precious was still there. Every few minutes his fingers would check it again, gentle, secret, hopeful. I pretended not to notice. Love is funny like that. Sometimes we see everything and choose to let the surprise live a little longer. We went to church. I remember the way sunlight slipped through the colored windows and painted Daniel's face in blues and reds. He tried to pray, but he kept losing the words. When our hands met, his palm was warm, trembling. I thought maybe he was finally going to ask. My heart started rehearsing the answer. Yes. Of course yes. Always yes. Afterward, we walked near the harbor. Families were out enjoying the morning. Sailors waved from ships. Music floated somewhere behind us. The world felt so certain of itself. Daniel grew quieter with every step. "Danny," I nudged him. "You're somewhere else." He smiled at me, but it was the smile of a man standing on the edge of something big. His hand went into his pocket again. He stopped walking. The air changed between us. This was it. I could feel it. He began to pull something out, and then we heard the engines. At first, it was only a murmur in the distance. People looked up with lazy curiosity, shading their eyes. But Daniel didn't. Daniel went still. I saw it in his face before I understood it in my mind. Fear. Real fear. The planes came fast, screaming across the sky. The red marks under their wings flashed like wounds. The first explosion swallowed the harbor. The ground shook. Windows burst. Smoke rose like the end of the world. Children cried. Grown men froze. I remember grabbing Daniel's arm. "Tell me this isn't real," I begged him. But he was already somewhere else. Duty had found him. "I have to go," he said. I held him harder. "No, you don't." But we both knew that was a lie. Some loves are brave. Some loves are obedient. Ours had to be both. He kissed me, and it tasted like goodbye, trying not to be. "When it's over, I'll come back," he promised. "Promise me." I cried. "I promise." And then he ran toward the fire while everyone else ran away. I kept waiting for him to turn around. He did. Only once. Just long enough for me to memorize the way he looked alive. I didn't know that memory would have to last me years. In his pocket, the ring remained hidden. The question remained unasked. And above us, the sky kept falling. People think explosions are loud. They are. But not louder than the silence that comes after someone you love runs away from you. I stood by the waterfront, my fingers still curved as if Daniel were inside them. Around me, the world had lost its shape. Mothers screamed for children. Men shouted directions no one followed. Smoke climbed higher and higher, turning the bright Hawaiian morning into something dark and impossible. And Daniel was already gone, swallowed by it. I tried to breathe, but the air had changed. It tasted like metal and fear. Sirens began to rise from every direction, wailing over the thunder of more bombs. The harbor burned. Ships that had looked eternal only minutes ago were breaking open like toys. "Miss, you need to move," someone yelled at me. But my feet refused. What if he came back because he forgot something? What if he turned and I wasn't there? Love can make statues out of people. Another blast shook the ground and finally pushed life back into my legs. I stumbled away from the railing, my ears ringing, my heart screaming his name even when my mouth couldn't. "Danny! Danny! Danny!" Every running sailor looked like him for half a second. Every voice almost was his. Hope kept tricking me, cruel and fast. I found myself helping without remembering how I started. A woman had fallen. I pulled her up. A little boy cried for his father. I carried him toward a group moving away from the smoke. Somewhere hands were bleeding. Somewhere prayers were breaking. All the while, I kept searching the fire for one face. Just one. Above us, the planes returned. Low. Hungry. The sound they made. God, I still hear it in my sleep. Like the sky itself had teeth. People dropped to the ground. I covered the boy with my body, whispering that it would be all right, lying the way adults lie when they have nothing else to give. When I dared to look again, more smoke, more ruin, more endings. But not Daniel. Never Daniel. Hours lost their meaning. Morning did not become afternoon. It became survival. Soldiers rushed past me toward the harbor. Trucks screamed by. Stretchers appeared, then more stretchers, then so many that I stopped trying to count. Every time one passed, my heart stopped. Please not him. Please not him. I hated myself for the relief that followed each stranger. Someone guided us toward a safer street. I don't remember agreeing. I don't remember walking. My body moved. My mind stayed behind with the promise he had thrown over his shoulder. I'll come back. Men say things like that because they must. Women hold on to them because they have to. By late afternoon, the attack had drifted into memory, but the fire still wrote horror across the horizon. Black smoke folded into the clouds. Ash fell softly, almost gentle, like a cruel imitation of snow. I stood there covered in it, wondering if some part of it belonged to him. Don't think like that, Emily. Don't you dare. I made my way home as the city trembled. Doors were open. Radios shouted terrible confirmations. Neighbors gathered, crying, praying, repeating rumors like they were medicine. No lists yet. No names. Just fear waiting to be organized. My parents rushed to me the moment they saw my face. "Where is Daniel?" my mother asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. 'Cause I didn't know if he was still a man walking, or already a memory. That night, Honolulu did not sleep. And neither did I. I sat by the window in the dress I had worn for a proposal that never came, staring toward the direction of the harbor. Sometimes the flames grew brighter, and I imagined they were signals. Maybe he was looking at the same light. Maybe he was alive. Maybe promises were stronger than war. I pressed my hands together and tried to remember the exact weight of his arms around me, terrified that even that might begin to fade. "Come back," I whispered into the dark. "I'm still here." But the night did not answer. And for the first time since loving him, I understood what waiting really meant. I did not see where Daniel went after he left me. For years that emptiness lived inside me like an unfinished sentence. But war has a way of returning pieces to you. Stories travel. Survivors remember. Names are spoken in hospital rooms, in letters, in the quiet company of grief. This is how I learned what happened to him after he ran toward the burning harbor. Daniel ran against the human tide. While civilians fled, he moved forward, heart hammering, lungs already full of smoke. The sound of bombs did not come one by one anymore. They overlapped, stacked, swallowed each other. The world had become a single, endless crash. He kept thinking of me. Not in poetry. Not in grand speeches. Just in flashes. My hair in the sunlight. My hand in his. The word promise repeating with every step. Near the docks, chaos ruled everything. A truck had overturned. Ammunition crates burned. Men shouted orders no one could hear. A sailor stumbled past him, face black with soot, blood running from his ear, still trying to go back. "Harper!" someone yelled. Daniel turned and saw Lieutenant Morris waving him over. Relief crossed the officer's face the way it does when the living find the living. "Help us with the wounded." Daniel nodded. No hesitation. Fear had already done its worst. Now there was only movement. They ran. The deck of the nearest ship looked like hell had chosen an address. Metal screamed under heat. Oil spread across the water, carrying fire wherever it pleased. Some men were jumping overboard, not knowing the sea itself was burning. Daniel grabbed the first man he reached. The sailor's leg was torn open, uniform soaked dark. "I've got you," Daniel said, though he had no idea how. The man cried for his mother. Most of them did. Bullets chewed the railing above Daniel's head. He ducked, dragged the wounded sailor toward cover, then ran back again because there were more. There were always more. At one point he slipped, almost fell, and his hand hit his coat. The ring. Still there. For half a second the world narrowed to the shape of it. "I'm coming back," he told himself. "I have to." A blast knocked him off his feet. The sky turned white. Sound disappeared, replaced by a terrible underwater ringing. When he tried to stand, his legs argued. Smoke poured across the deck like a living thing. "Harper!" someone screamed, but it came from very far away. He tasted blood. He thought of me again. "Wait for me." Training returned before strength did. He crawled. Found another man pinned beneath twisted metal. Together with two others he lifted, pulled, freed him. Daniel's arms trembled so badly he barely trusted them, but they obeyed. Pain could wait. Love could wait. Death would not. When the second wave of planes arrived, hope shrank. Men looked at each other with the understanding that some of them were already ghosts who hadn't fallen yet. Daniel wiped his face, leaving a smear of red he did not recognize as his own. "If I die," he thought, "she will never know." The idea terrified him more than the bombs. By the time medics pushed him toward the evacuation point, he was moving on something deeper than energy. He tried to argue to go back, but a corpseman grabbed his collar. "You did enough." Daniel looked over the water. Ships broken. Men missing. The morning gone forever. Had he done enough? How could anyone ever do enough? As they forced him toward a truck, he searched for paper, for anything he could write on. He found none. So he spoke instead, quietly to the air, hoping somehow the world carried messages where hands could not. "Emily, I'm trying. I'm trying to come back." I did not hear him say it. But I believe with all the stubbornness of a woman in love, that he did. Because that night, while I sat by my window whispering for him to return, something in my heart refused to break. The day after the sky fell, the world began asking for names. Not heroes. Not stories. Just names. Who was alive? Who was wounded? Who would never come home? I learned quickly that hope can survive explosions. What it cannot survive is a list. By morning the city had changed its voice. No music. No laughter drifting from open windows. Only radios breathing numbers and rumors, and the restless movement of families who did not know where to stand or what to do with their hands. My mother tried to make me eat. I tried to pretend I could swallow. Every few minutes someone knocked on a neighbor's door. Every knock felt like a verdict traveling down the street, choosing houses one by one. Please pass us, I prayed. Please keep walking. They're posting names near the hospital, my father said. The sentence moved through me like winter. I nodded before I could stop myself. I'm going, I told them. Because if Daniel was on it, I needed to know. And if he wasn't, I needed that too. The crowd had already gathered when we arrived. Wives, mothers, brothers, children lifted into arms so they would not see what grief looked like up close. Soldiers tried to keep order, but order had drowned yesterday. A nurse walked out carrying papers. I hated her. I hated that she held the power to rearrange the universe. They nailed the sheets onto a wooden board. People surged forward. For a moment I could not move. If I stayed where I was, Daniel existed in every possible future. Alive. Hurt. Walking toward me. Calling my name. The moment I looked, the future would choose. I stepped closer. Names blurred together. My eyes refused to behave. Every Harper felt like him. Every D threatened to become Daniel. I searched once. Nothing. I searched again, slower. Still nothing. Maybe they missed it. A woman near me whispered about her husband. Maybe he's helping somewhere else. Yes, I thought. Yes. Maybe. Then someone began to cry behind me, the kind of cry that breaks straight out of the soul without asking permission. Others followed, collapsing into arms, into strangers, into the terrible understanding that love does not make anyone bulletproof. But Daniel's name was not there. Not among the dead. Not among the wounded. Not anywhere. Relief is a strange animal. It bit me and blessed me at the same time. If he wasn't listed, he could still be alive. But if he wasn't listed, where was he? I touched the empty space where a ring should have been on my finger. I imagined him somewhere in the city, exhausted, trying to find me. Maybe communications were down. Maybe he had been sent somewhere else. Maybe. Hope builds entire worlds out of that word. Emily, my father said gently, we should go. I nodded, but my eyes kept scanning the paper as if letters might rearrange themselves out of pity. They did not. On the way home, ambulances passed us again and again. Some men inside them were quiet. Too quiet. Others called for water, for nurses, for mothers who were not there. Every face made my heart lurch. Is it him? No. Is it him? No. How many times can a heart fall in one day and still keep beating? By evening, rumors spread that more names would come tomorrow. Tomorrow. A word both merciful and cruel. Another day to hope. Another day to fear. That night I folded Daniel's favorite sweater in my lap and tried to remember the exact sound of his laugh. I repeated it in my mind like a prayer, afraid that if I stopped, the world might replace it with silence. You promised. I whispered into the dark. I was not angry. Not yet. I was simply a woman standing in the doorway of forever, waiting to see if someone would walk back through it. They used a new word for people like Daniel. Missing. Not dead. Not alive. Just misplaced by the hands of war. As if men were gloves. As if they would turn up in the wrong drawer tomorrow. When the second list appeared, I already knew how my body would react. The trembling. The dry mouth. The desperate bargain with God. Let him be wounded. Let him be broken. Let him be anything that breathes. The nurse would not look at us this time. She carried the papers like they were heavier than metal. Soldiers posted them faster, as if speed could lessen impact. I pushed forward before fear could root me to the ground. Find him. Find him. Find. There. Harper, Daniel, status unknown. I read it again. And again. Unknown. The word opened beneath me like a well. My mother caught my arm. What does it mean? I shook my head. I did not understand how a man could exist and not exist in the same breath. Was he floating somewhere in the harbor? Was he wandering a hospital unable to speak his name? Was he calling for me right now? Unknown. 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 Around me, other families reacted in their own private disasters. Some collapsed with relief because their loved ones were not listed among the dead. Others broke because hope had just been postponed, not granted. I stood very still. If I moved, I might fall apart and never find the pieces again. He's alive, I said finally. I had no evidence. But love, when cornered, invents its own. He promised me. And I built my entire belief on that fragile human sentence. Days began to lose edges. Morning meant checking hospitals. Afternoon meant standing in lines. Evening meant returning home with nothing but exhaustion and the taste of failure. I learned the smell of antiseptic. I learned how grief looks when it's trying to be polite. I learned how many men could cry in one corridor. None of them were Daniel. Sometimes I imagined he had lost his memory. It was easier than imagining he had lost his life. I pictured him sitting somewhere, confused, trying to understand why his heart hurt for someone he couldn't name. I would find him, I told myself. I would stand in front of him. And love would remember for both of us. At night I replayed our last seconds together. The kiss. The turn. The promise. I held on to it so tightly that it began to change shape, becoming larger than reality, stronger than bombs. If he broke it, I thought, the universe would have to apologize. But the universe remained silent. 1 week after the attack, an officer came to our door. I saw the uniform through the window. My lungs forgot how to work. This is it, I thought. This is where they choose. My father opened the door while I stood behind him, already falling, already bracing for the end. The officer removed his hat. "Miss Parker?" he asked. I nodded. He looked at his paper, then back at me. "Ma'am, we're still trying to account for him. Still trying. The cruelty of almost news. Did anyone see him?" I whispered. "Yes," the officer said. "Several men reported he was helping with evacuations." Helping. Of course he was. Even while disappearing, Daniel had been Daniel. After the officer left, I went to my room and finally allowed myself to cry the way the others had at the lists. Not because he was gone, but because I did not know how to reach him. Before sleeping, I made him a promise of my own. "I'll be here," I said into the quiet, "no matter how long it takes." And somewhere in the vast machinery of war, a woman began her long apprenticeship in waiting. Waiting teaches you strange mathematics. A minute can last a year. A week can vanish in a blink. And the heart learns to beat inside questions instead of answers. By the 10th day, I no longer woke from sleep. I surfaced from it, like someone rising carefully from deep water, afraid of what might be waiting above. Daniel was still missing. And missing, I was beginning to understand, was a country of its own. The call came just after noon. A voice from the Naval Hospital, careful, professional, already tired of breaking people. Miss Parker. Yes. We have reason to believe a man matching Daniel Harper's description may have been transferred here from the harbor. May have been. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Is he alive? A pause. We believe so. Believe. War loved that word. I don't remember hanging up. I remember my mother helping me with my coat, because my fingers have forgotten how buttons worked. I remember the street moving past too slowly. I remember thinking, if he is there, I will forgive the world. Everything. The hospital stood like a city built from pain. Ambulances outside. Stretchers moving in. Smoke-stained uniforms. The air thick with medicine sweat. Hope fighting despair in every hallway. Inside, names traveled faster than people. I gave them his. They searched. Too long. Always too long. Follow me, a nurse said finally. My knees weakened with such sudden gratitude I nearly thanked her for the rest of my life. We walked past rows of beds. Bandages. Burns. Men sleeping like they had been dropped from great heights. Others staring at ceilings as if answers might be written there. Each step whispered, please, please, please. We turned a corner. There, she said gently. And I saw him. Daniel. Alive. Breathing. Real. For one glorious second, the universe returned to its proper place. I moved toward him, already crying, already laughing, already free. Then I saw his eyes. They passed over me politely. The way you look at a stranger in a train station. No recognition. No relief. No Emily. I stopped. Something inside my chest folded quietly in half. Danny. I whispered. Nothing. He watched me with mild confusion, like I was a puzzle he did not remember starting. The nurse touched my arm. Her voice soft with practiced tragedy. Head trauma, she said. We're seeing a lot of it. I nodded. Of course. Of course war would not give him back without conditions. I pulled a chair close to his bed. It's me, I told him gently. Emily. The name hung between us, waiting for a miracle. His brow moved slightly, searching some dark hallway in his mind. I'm sorry, he said. 3 words more devastating than any explosion. I don't know you. I smiled. Because if I stopped, I would shatter. That's okay, I said. I know you. I took his hand. It felt the same. Warm. Strong. Alive. How could love survive in the body but vanish from the mind? You're Daniel Harper, I told him. You helped people. You ran toward the fire. He listened carefully, like a student of his own life. Did I? He asked. Yes, I said, tears slipping free. You did. He looked embarrassed, almost shy. I'm glad, he murmured. I wanted to tell him everything. The church. The harbor. The almost proposal. But those belonged to us. And suddenly I was the only one still holding them. So I made a decision. If memory would not return to him, I would build it again. From the beginning. I squeezed his fingers. Don't worry, I whispered, leaning close enough that maybe his heart would recognize what his mind could not. I'll help you remember. Outside the ward. Families celebrated reunions. Inside, I met the man I loved for the second time. I had imagined 1,000 reunions. In every one of them, Daniel knew my name. He would smile the moment he saw me. He would reach for me, say I was late, say he had been waiting, say he kept his promise. None of my rehearsals included introducing myself to the man who once knew how I took my coffee. But love is adaptable. If it must begin again, it will. So I began again. Emily, I said, pointing gently to myself, the way you might speak to a child or someone waking from a long dream. We met 2 years ago. At the pier. You dropped your hat in the water. He listened with complete seriousness. I did. You blamed the wind. I smiled. It wasn't the wind. You were nervous. A small, uncertain curve touched his mouth. I sound foolish. You were, I said softly. It's why I liked you. The days inside the hospital moved differently from the outside world. Here men measured time in bandage changes, in doses, in visiting hours. Some memories returned like shy animals. Others never came back at all. I sat beside him every moment they allowed. I told him about our walks. About the time he tried to fix my father's radio and made it worse. About how he always whistled off key when he thought no one noticed. Sometimes he laughed. And every time he did, I stole the sound and hid it in my chest for safety. But when visiting hours ended and I had to leave, fear returned. What if he forgot everything I rebuilt today? What if tomorrow I was a stranger again? On the 4th evening, as the sun lowered itself carefully beyond the hospital windows, Daniel watched me with a different expression. Not recognition, but effort. Emily, he said slowly, testing the name like it might break. Were we? He couldn't finish. The question trembled between us. I took his hand. Yes, I answered. We were everything. His eyes searched my face, apologizing for crimes he did not remember committing. I'm trying, he whispered. I believed him. War had stolen many things from us, but not his honesty. Close your eyes, I told him. He obeyed. Picture the water, I said. Morning light. You're about to ask me something important. His breathing changed. I saw the effort, the digging, the reach. For a second I thought, this is it. But pain crossed his face instead. A wall. Too high. He opened his eyes, frustrated, ashamed. I can't, he said. I pressed my forehead to his hand. That's all right, I murmured, though my heart cracked a little with every kindness. We have time. Do we? The thought came uninvited. War had already proven how cruel it could be with time. That night, a doctor stopped me in the hallway. Sometimes, he explained gently, emotion helps. Familiar objects. Music. Places. I nodded. I knew exactly which object might carry the strongest memory in the world. The ring. Still somewhere in the chaos of that morning. Still waiting to complete its sentence. The next day, I leaned close to Daniel and kissed his cheek. I'm going to find something of yours, I told him. What is it? He asked. A promise, I replied. He watched me leave, confusion mixed with trust. He did not remember loving me, but somewhere inside him, he still believed me. The harbor was unrecognizable. Not the place we had laughed in just hours before the sky fell. Not the city that held sunrises and secrets and our ordinary plans. Everything was ash and metal. Smoke rose in jagged towers where ships had once floated calmly, their flags lazily dancing in the wind. Waves licked at broken timbers like they were trying to swallow the destruction, to hide it, but nothing could erase it. I stepped carefully among splintered wood and twisted steel, my boots crunching ash, my heart thrumming in a rhythm I could barely control. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow seemed to hold Daniel, or take him away. I had no one with me this time. I didn't want anyone to slow me down. Not the officers who had been kind. Not the volunteers who held stretchers and whispered names. I needed to see this place as he had seen it. And maybe, just maybe, find what he left behind. I remembered that morning. The first explosion, the second, the scream of engines, the taste of smoke in our mouths. The smell of fear was still in the harbor air, woven into the blackened wood, into the water itself. And then I remembered the pocket. His coat pocket. The ring. My hand shook as I reached into the rubble. Please, I whispered to the world. Please let me find it. Please let him still be part of this. I crawled over charred planks, ducked beneath a fallen beam, slid along steel rails heated by the sun. My palms were cut by sharp edges. My dress snagged on something jagged. And yet I did not stop. I was searching not just for metal and velvet. I was searching for him. Hours passed. Time was a cruel companion. The sun climbed higher, burned hotter. My water bottle was empty. My throat was raw. My eyes stung from the smoke and tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed before. And still I moved forward. I found objects that reminded me of the morning. A child's toy, a sailor's torn uniform, a boot floating in water. Each one whispered a story I could not hear. Each one made me cry silently. Then I saw it. A glimmer among black splinters. My heart stopped. I crawled closer. My fingers dug beneath ashen metal. My nails broke. Blood mingled with the dirt, but I barely noticed. It was the velvet box. It was bent, burned on one corner. The ribbon frayed. The small brass clasp scratched, but it was still there, still hiding the promise it held. I held it in my palm and wept. Not for the ring. Not for the proposal that had never been made. I wept for him. For the man who had run into fire for strangers and left me behind. For the boy who had touched my hand one last time, and whose memory had been stolen by smoke and chaos. For the love that survived in a pocket, in a small box, while the world fell apart. I pressed the box to my heart. It was heavy in a way no metal should be. It carried everything. His courage. His laughter. His absence. His promise. I felt his presence through it. Felt him somewhere breathing alive. Somewhere in the city, still wounded, still trying to remember me. Hold on. I whispered. Just hold on. The sun was dipping when I finally stood. Shadows stretched long across the ruins. I tucked the ring safely inside my bag. I did not dare put it on my finger yet. That moment would have to wait. That moment would have to wait until he remembered who he was. Until he remembered me. I looked back once at the harbor. It would never be the same. Neither would we. But somewhere inside me, a fragile spark of hope burned. I knew now that love could survive the worst of everything. That even when the sky fell, even when people disappeared, even when memory failed, promises could remain. And I would wait for him. I walked away slowly. Every step heavy, every breath tight. Every heartbeat carried one word. Come back. And somehow I believed he would. Daniel woke to silence. Not the soft kind that blankets a peaceful morning. Not the comforting quiet of home. This silence was thin and sharp, as if the world had forgotten how to breathe around him. He blinked at the white ceiling, the humming machines, the pale sunlight sneaking through blinds. For a moment, the room didn't make sense. Then it did. Hospital. Injured men. Memories scattered like shards of glass. And a name. A feeling tugged at him, but he could not reach it. He turned his head slightly, and there she was, sitting in the chair beside the bed, quiet, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on him as though she had been waiting forever. Her presence stirred something. Not recognition. Not yet. But a pull. Something deep in his chest ached and hummed, vibrating with familiarity he could not name. Emily? He tried, voice rough and foreign to his own ears. Her eyes widened. Yes, she whispered, the single word carrying years of hope, of fear, of love. He frowned, confused. I don't know you. A pang tore through her, but she swallowed it. She had learned patience. She had learned hope. It's okay, she said gently, moving closer. I'll help you remember. Her hand brushed his, the faintest pressure, and something shifted in him. A spark. A whisper of something familiar. He clenched his fingers reflexively, not knowing why, not knowing how. Over the next hours, Emily did what she had been preparing for. She told him stories. Small stories. Silly stories. Stories about a clumsy man who tried to fix a radio and failed spectacularly. Stories about walks at sunrise, about the coffee he always burned, about the way he made her laugh even when the world was falling apart. At first he listened politely, head nodding, trying to understand. But sometimes a detail, an inflection, a smell, a gesture, struck him like lightning. A laugh that felt like his own. A word he had whispered once. A hand that reminded him of warmth. Memory flickered. Not complete. Not safe. But flickered. He sat up one day, staring at her. I feel like I know you, he murmured, eyes searching. But I can't fully remember. Emily smiled through tears. That's okay. Pieces come back slowly. You'll get there. I'll be here every step. She reached for his hand again. He hesitated, then allowed her to hold it. His fingers tightened just a fraction, and Emily's heart leapt. Days bled into weeks. Some mornings he remembered a detail clearly, only to forget it by evening. Some nights he woke from nightmares, calling her name in panic, only to find her hand in his, steadying him, keeping him tethered to reality. Through it all, Daniel began to recognize the sound of her voice, the shape of her laughter, the way she moved when she thought no one was watching. Fragments. Little fragments. Enough to start rebuilding a life they had almost lost. One evening, as the sun set in pale orange across the city, he traced a finger over the small scar on her wrist, a scar he didn't recall making her notice. I remember this, he said, voice trembling. Emily leaned closer, careful not to overwhelm him. Good. That's one piece. We'll find the rest. He looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time since waking, something within him recognized the weight of love, the echo of promises, the memory of fire and smoke. I think I'm coming back, he whispered. Emily smiled, tears sliding freely now. You already are, Danny. You already are. The journey was far from over. Memory, like love, could be stubborn. But they were together. And together they could face the fragments, rebuild them, and maybe finally find the life that had almost been stolen. Daniel woke to a sound he couldn't place. Not the beep of the monitors, not the muffled voices outside the hospital ward. Something else. A rhythm. A voice. A heartbeat. His own maybe, but not entirely. He opened his eyes and saw her. Emily. Sitting quietly beside the bed, hands folded in her lap, as she had been for weeks. But this time she didn't just feel familiar. She felt like a story his body remembered before his mind could catch up. Emily, he murmured, his lips dry, voice rough from disuse. His fingers twitched involuntarily toward hers. She looked at him, a soft, radiant light in her eyes that had become his anchor over the past days. Yes, Danny, she whispered, leaning slightly forward. It's me. I'm here. His eyes searched hers, desperate, frustrated, confused. A memory lingered, teasing him. It came like a distant scent, the salt of the harbor, the heat of the sun, the smell of smoke. And then a sound. His own laugh shared with hers, echoing from somewhere deep inside. I feel something, he said, voice trembling. But I don't know what it is. It's like I'm missing a word in a sentence I should know by heart. Emily reached for his hand slowly, letting him guide the pace. Her fingers brushed his, and for the first time Daniel did not pull away. He felt a spark of recognition, a pull toward the warmth that had been constant even through the fog of amnesia. Do you remember the harbor? She asked softly. The morning the world changed? Daniel's eyes widened slightly. A shadow passed across his face. I remember fire, smoke, screams, and a hand. Someone's hand I think I was holding. His breath hitched. But I can't see their face. Emily smiled through tears, squeezing his hand gently. It was me. You were holding my hand. I kept hoping you'd come back to me, and you did. You made it. Something stirred deep inside him, a tugging, like a string that had been frayed and knotted, suddenly being pulled taut. He remembered running toward the flames, not for himself, not for glory, but for the people who couldn't save themselves. And her hand, her warmth, her presence, the way she had fit into him like a memory he had not yet allowed himself to recall. He closed his eyes, trying to hold on to it. And suddenly, like the tide rushing back to a long empty shore, everything came crashing in. The memory of that morning returned with unbearable clarity. The sunlight on the water, the smell of the harbor, the first explosion, the panic in everyone around him. And then her, Emily. The way she had looked at him, knowing everything even before he did. The way she had smiled, worried, hopeful. The way her hair had caught the sunlight, framing her face, golden and impossible. And the ring. He remembered the pocket, the small velvet box, the weight of it in his hand, the promise he had carried without speaking, even as fire consumed the harbor, even as chaos screamed around him. He gasped. His hands flew to his coat, searching, though he was no longer wearing it. The memory burned in his mind, unbearable and sweet. The promise. The words he had never said, but had meant more than life itself. I'll come back. Always. Emily watched him, knowing the storm of memory was returning. She did not speak. She simply held his hand steady, grounding him. His eyes filled with tears as he finally looked at her properly, truly seeing her. Emily. He whispered again, voice breaking. It was you all this time. I remember. I remember the harbor. I remember the morning. I remember you. Emily leaned forward, her tears falling freely now. Yes, Danny. You remembered. You came back. He swallowed hard, choked on the emotion building in his chest. I carried something. Something I never gave you. His voice was trembling, almost inaudible. He reached slowly into the small pouch hidden beneath his hospital gown, the memory of it guiding his hand. The velvet box appeared. He held it out to her, trembling. I wanted to give it to you. Emily's hands flew to take it. Her fingers brushed his, and she opened the box slowly. There it was. The ring. Simple, perfect. A promise untouched by fire, chaos, or time. I can't believe it, she whispered. You kept it all this time. Daniel shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I had to, even when I couldn't remember. Even when I was gone. I carried it. I promised myself I'd give it to you. That I'd come back. Emily's hands closed around his. And you did. You came back. He looked at her, anguish and relief mingling in a single shattering moment. I'm so sorry. I failed you. You didn't fail me, she interrupted, her voice steady despite the tears. You survived. You came back. And that's all I ever needed. Time slowed. The world outside the hospital ceased to exist. No monitors. No voices. No sun or shadows. Only them. He held her hands. She held his. The ring rested between them, a small but infinite symbol of the promise they had almost lost. I should have asked you that morning, he whispered, before everything fell apart. I should have. You did, Emily said softly. In your own way. You asked me with your heart. You ran back to me. That was your question. And my answer has been yes all along. Daniel's head bowed. His forehead pressed to hers. The tears kept coming, but they were no longer just sorrow. They were relief, love, and the release of years trapped inside the silence between them. For hours they sat like that. Words were unnecessary. Every heartbeat, every sigh, every shared tear said what nothing else could. He remembered her voice fully now. Her laughter. Her touch. The warmth of her hand in his. He remembered the way the morning light had touched her face at the harbor, and he finally understood the depth of what he had almost lost. I love you, he said finally, the words breaking through the remnants of fear and confusion. I love you too, she whispered, her forehead still resting against his. I always have. I waited. Weeks passed as Daniel's memory gradually rebuilt itself. The fragments of war, of fire, of chaos of that devastating morning, all returned slowly. And with each recovered memory, their bond strengthened, no longer fragile but tempered by survival, patience, and the almost impossible ordeal of waiting. He remembered the faces of the sailors he saved, the screams, the destruction, the fire that had tried to steal everything from him, including her. But he also remembered that he had chosen love, carried it through chaos, and had finally returned. The ring became more than a symbol. It became their covenant, not just of engagement but of survival, of promise, of endurance, of hearts refusing to break even when the world did. One evening, Emily sat by the window of his hospital room, the ring now on her finger, small and glimmering. Daniel watched her, a smile tugging at his lips. I remember everything now, he said softly, almost in awe. The harbor. The church. The morning we were going to. I remember it all. And somehow, it was worth all the waiting. Emily reached out and touched his cheek. It always was. Even when you couldn't remember. Even when the world tried to steal you from me. Love kept you here. Love brought you back. He kissed her hand gently. The weight of what they had endured hung in the air around them, yet it no longer felt heavy. It felt sacred. "Promise me," he whispered. "I promise," she replied instantly. "Promise me," he repeated. "We never let anything, fire, war, time, ever steal this again." She smiled, leaning her forehead to his. "I promise. Always." And in that moment the world could fall apart again. It did not matter. Because they had each other. The fire could not burn what survived in hearts. The war could not steal what was meant to endure. The sky could fall again. They would hold on together unbroken. As night settled over Honolulu, the harbor in ruins, the stars flickered faintly through the smoke. But inside that small hospital room, the world was whole again. Two hearts that had been torn apart, displaced, and nearly lost had found their way back. And finally, at last, Daniel Harper and Emily Parker were together. Together. With memory, with love, with promise, with fire in their veins and the ring between them, an emblem of all they had survived and all they would face side by side. The city had begun to breathe again. Not the same as before. Nothing ever is after fire. After war. After people vanish into smoke and chaos. But breathing at least was possible. Daniel and Emily walked along the quiet streets of Honolulu, hand in hand. The harbor was a ruin still, wooden beams charred black, steel twisted, water dark with oil and ash. The morning sun fell over it gently, unhurried, as if the world itself wanted to make amends for what had been lost. Daniel's hand was warm around hers. The ring shone in the soft light, tiny but eternal, a talisman against all that had tried to separate them. He stopped, taking her hand in both of his, eyes searching hers. "It's hard to believe it's real," he said softly. "That we're here. That you're really here." Emily smiled, tears threatening again. "I've never left. Not for a second." He drew a deep breath, the scent of the harbor, salt, smoke, memory, filling his lungs. The memories had returned, each one sharp and beautiful and devastating. He remembered the fire, the panic, the chaos. He remembered the screams. He remembered the way he had felt her hand slip from his in the panic. And then, he remembered running. Running back to her through flames, through smoke, through everything. "And you waited," he said, voice catching. "You waited for me." "I did," she said. "I promised myself I'd wait. And I did. I waited because I knew you'd come back. I just knew it." Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. The world seemed to shrink until it existed only in that moment. He could feel every heartbeat, every tremor of emotion, every scar, visible and invisible, that had led them to this point. "I don't know how to repay you," he whispered. "For everything. For surviving. For not giving up. For keeping faith in me when I didn't even know who I was." Emily laughed softly, the sound fragile and joyful, and it broke something open inside him. "You don't have to repay me," she said. "We survived. That's enough. That's everything." They wandered along the edge of the harbor, where the water lapped gently against burned-out piers. Daniel paused, gazing at the horizon. The memory of the fire was still vivid. Flames, smoke, screams, but now it felt different. It no longer held terror alone. It was proof. Proof that they had endured. Proof that love, fragile and persistent, could survive even the worst of human chaos. Emily watched him quietly, her hand still in his. She had seen him at his weakest, at his most lost, and now she saw him rebuilding himself slowly. Not as a man who had survived fire, but as a man who had reclaimed his heart piece by piece, memory by memory. "Danny," she said softly, "do you remember the morning we Almost lost each other? He swallowed hard. I do. Every detail. The smoke, the fear, the fire. The people I saved. And you. I remember you. Always you. She smiled, brushing her fingers over his hand. You also promised something that day. Remember? Daniel's eyes softened. He reached into his pocket, feeling the ring he had carried for her through the chaos. I remember, he said. I promised I'd come back. That I'd find you. And I did. The memory of running toward the flames, the smoke in his lungs, the fire in the harbor, it all came rushing back. The panic, the helplessness, the desperation, and then the unwavering thought of her waiting somewhere, keeping a promise he hadn't yet said aloud. He closed his eyes, tears falling freely, feeling it all. The fear, the relief, the love, the promise. The ring glinted in the sunlight, a small but eternal anchor to everything that mattered. I carry everything with me, he whispered. Every memory, every fear, every moment I almost lost you. I carry it all, and I will never let go again. Emily held his face in her hands. We carry it together now. Always. Days passed and life began to return in gentle, uneven rhythms. The city slowly repaired itself. People returned to their routines. But Daniel and Emily's world was quieter, richer, and far more delicate. Every morning they woke to each other. Every evening they recounted pieces of the past, rebuilding their memories like fragile mosaics. Daniel learned again the small things. How Emily laughed, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, how she brewed coffee in the morning, how she would hum a song while reading or writing letters. Each memory was reclaimed like sunlight through a cracked window. Emily watched him rebuild himself with patience and love, sometimes marveling at his resilience. He had faced fire, loss, amnesia, and near death. And yet here he was learning how to love again, how to trust again, how to be fully alive. One afternoon, months later, they returned to the harbor. Not to the ruins, but to a quiet pier where the water was calm, the sky soft and golden. Daniel held the ring in his hand, turning it slowly, feeling its weight, feeling its meaning. Emily, he said, kneeling before her, the light of sunset bathing his face. I carried this for you through fire, through chaos, through everything that tried to keep us apart. Now, I give it to you. Not as a promise, not as a hope, but as a fact. That you are mine, and I am yours, forever. Will you? Tears filled her eyes. She nodded before he could finish the question. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, perfectly fitting. She laughed and cried at the same time, and he drew her into his arms. The harbor was quiet, but their hearts were loud. The fire that had almost stolen them now felt distant, almost sacred in its memory. They had endured. They had returned. They had remembered. Daniel kissed her gently, savoring the moment, the warmth, the softness, the reality that they were finally together. No more waiting, he whispered. No more chaos. Only us. Emily rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady and strong. Only us, she repeated. Time did not rush them. Seasons changed. The harbor slowly returned to life. Ships came and went. Children played nearby, oblivious to the fire that had once consumed the place. And Daniel and Emily built a life together, quietly, tenderly, slowly, making each day count, cherishing every small moment. They laughed. They cried. They remembered. They loved. and they promised silently and loudly that nothing, no fire, no war, no absence, could ever separate them again. One night, as the sun set in streaks of amber across the water, Daniel held Emily's hand, tracing the ring, tracing the promise they had survived to fulfill. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think promises were just words. Now I know they are everything." Emily smiled. "Everything," she agreed, leaning her forehead to his. And in the quiet glow of the harbor, with the remnants of fire behind them, Daniel Harper and Emily Parker finally understood what survival truly meant. Not just staying alive, but finding each other again, and never letting go. The ring on her finger gleamed faintly in the dying light. A symbol of love, of memory, of survival, of everything they had endured. And together they stepped into the rest of their lives, whole, unbroken, and finally truly free.